COD is a well-known shooter. It is one of the big dog of video games and is easily one of the most popular and iconic video game franchises of all time. We all know it, we've all seen it, and we've all played it. Call of Duty has had its ups and downs, highs and lows, but why? Let's take it back a few years to 2013. After the massive success of Black Ops 2, COD had a huge community that was waiting for its next installment in the franchise. It, at the time, had so much to live up to, especially after great games like BO1, MW3, and BO2. But what exactly happened? Well, it received the most backlash out of any COD known today at its time. This was the beginning of what I like to call the dark age of COD games. There was a pattern that many of the fans realized after 2013, and it's that the game sucked. After Ghost, we had received Advanced Warfare, and boy did that game receive hate as well. We all know that Advanced Warfare's movement was drastically different and fans didn't like that. And then we saw Black Ops 3. Now, of course, there were a bunch of people who enjoyed that game. And to that, I also think that it goes the same way with the last two games as well. There were a lot of fans who enjoyed them, but for the most part, the backlash they received were insane. Luckily, Black Ops 3 is a lot more appreciated now, so I guess that is a good thing. The cycle continued though with Infinite Warfare, and if you thought the other games got hated on quickly, you'd be surprised. The community acted fast as Infinite Warfare's reveal trailer quickly became the most hated game-related video on YouTube. It also hasn't aged well either, since it's still easily the most hated COD game of all time. People just didn't like the futuristic aspect in these COD games, and that's where majority of this hate stems from. 2017 hits and the World War II trailer drops. Now at this point, a lot of people thought that this would be COD's official comeback. Game looked promising, it was boots on the ground with no more futuristic gameplay, and it was a game inspired by a very important historical event. So what exactly happened? Well, it's another game that at launch did not live up to its expectations. Both multiplayer and campaign were just decent, and the zombies was actually pretty hated. Now, Sledgehammer did actually start making changes to better the multiplayer, but by the time that they did, most people stopped playing the game. Why, you may ask? Well, there's a little game called Fortnite on the horizon, and we all know what happened after that. Epic Games created an amazing game, and they listened to the fanbase, doing incredible weekly updates, always keeping the game refreshing and new. It was such a blast, even though Fortnite has been pretty bad for the last 2 years now, but that's besides the point. So many other games started to shine while COD never really improved. Games like Fortnite, Apex, and really any battle royale you can think of. Black Ops 4 was the next game that was released, and it was bringing its own battle royale to the table, which was alright. The main reason BO4 fell short is because of its competitors and a very rough launch. There were a bunch of bugs and glitches, and the game would constantly crash. At this point, Call of Duty was in a really rough state because they just couldn't keep up with all the other games that were innovating new things but also keeping it balanced and refreshing. After all of these games being released, it was obvious that the franchise just couldn't get its footing back. Infinity Ward was ready to reboot the Modern Warfare series, and in 2019, there it was. Modern Warfare was an interesting game because it was released at a perfect time, especially with all of the COVID stuff going on and Warzone just releasing. Since crossplay was a thing and Warzone was free, it brought a lot of eyes to COD again since people were trying to keep busy with video games during quarantine. COD was finally starting to gain a little bit of respect again. Cold War sort of went the same way since it was connected to Warzone and also had crossplay. Except during the year for Cold War, Warzone started to get very repetitive with no major map changes and nothing that really kept the battle royale interesting. Something that was terrible for the franchise as a total were the allegations towards Activision about what the staff was like and what was going on at the office. It all sounded terrible, and it really showed that they weren't prioritizing the games that were releasing, but rather some truthfully disgusting things. But let's talk a little bit more about why the games might be dying. Now, before I get into specifics, I think that there is something that's not specifically aimed towards COD, but in this situation, it is being targeted a lot, and that's cheaters. For a little bit now, cheating has been something that's been really big in COD because of how often people are seen cheating nowadays. I mean, back then it would take a year or two for hackers to actually start showing up a lot, but in these recent CODs, all it takes is a couple of months. Now, I don't know why it's such an issue now, but I'm assuming it has something to do with the PC player since that's usually where most hacks come from. And if that's the case, it explains a lot why Warzone is filled to the brim with hackers. And it baffles me how there's still yet to be any sort of anti-cheat in Warzone, but luckily that is something that's being released with Vanguard. Cheating has really been taking the fun away out of the everyday COD player, so that's pretty much why it's such a big issue. But what else exactly? Now, repetitiveness. Almost every COD is the exact same. I do want to partially blame the fanbase on this one because anytime they try to make something relatively new, it immediately receives hate and no one likes to even give it a shot. but I would also love to blame the developers. Reason is because whenever they try something new, they never end up reiterating old elements from the game. The COD game will either be an identical copy from the last, or it will be a completely different game with no familiar elements, and it won't even look like a Call of Duty. They need to realize that they can both innovate and reiterate. One more thing I want to bring up is skill-based matchmaking. Now, I've brought this up a couple times before because it's something that only really caters to the sweatiest players out there. Casual players can't really have fun with something like this implemented into casual pub matches because it matches you up with some of the most try-hard players. There's no fun about that. It also doesn't make sense to have SBMM in pubs since league play is a thing. There is a literal mode that caters to sweaty players, yet they still want to implement skill-based matchmaking in a more casual mosh pit. It's taking the literal fun out of their game, so why keep it in? It's clear that they don't listen to the fans that often, and when developers don't actually listen to the community's feedback, it can affect their game drastically. But let's fast forward to today where Vanguard was revealed and had a beta. Because Vanguard is a game that's based off of World War II, people weren't too happy about that since we've already received multiple games based off of the World Wars. But the beta released and it definitely had some mixed feelings, but seeing how COD games have been going, it's a tough call because COD is very unpredictable and you don't really know if you're going to enjoy the game or not until it's actually fully released. The franchise has been hitting a decline for years, but thanks to the last 2 games, it's been slightly increasing again, which is why it's such a tough call. You can't really tell how it's going to do this year simply because there has been declines and increases in popularity and relevancy every year. And with Halo Infinite and Battlefield dropping around the same time, we must ask the question, is COD really dying?